Bitcoin just did something that most people are completely underestimating. And if you hold XRP, you need to be paying very close attention right now, because this isn't just about Bitcoin. This is about what happens next across the entire crypto market, and more specifically, what this could mean for XRP. Let me explain exactly why this matters. Right now, Bitcoin is doing something we've seen before. Not once, not twice, but across multiple cycles. It's moving first. And that might not sound like a big deal until you understand what usually follows. Because historically, Bitcoin doesn't move in isolation. It moves first, and then the rest of the market reacts. And this is where things get really interesting for XRP holders. Because while everyone is focused on Bitcoin's price, what they're missing is the rotation that tends to come after. Money doesn't just enter crypto and sit in one asset. It moves, it rotates, it looks for the next opportunity. And that rotation phase is where some of the biggest moves in altcoins happen. We've seen it play out cycle after cycle. Bitcoin runs, dominance peaks, and then capital starts flowing outward looking for the next asymmetric bet. And here's the part that matters specifically for XRP. XRP has historically been one of the assets that moves when that rotation begins. Not always first, but often aggressively. And the setup we're seeing right now looks very similar to previous moments right before that shift happened. But here's where most people get this completely wrong. They wait. They wait for XRP to already be moving. They wait for headlines. They wait for confirmation. They want to see the green candles before they feel comfortable. And by the time that happens, the opportunity has already fundamentally changed. Because markets don't reward reaction. They reward positioning. The people who made real money in previous cycles weren't the ones who bought after the move was obvious. They were the ones who were already in position when it started. Now, let's actually break down what Bitcoin just did, because context matters here. Bitcoin has shown strength, either pushing higher, holding key levels, or demonstrating resilience in a way that signals genuine confidence in the broader market. And confidence is everything in crypto, because when Bitcoin shows strength, it does one thing above all else. It brings attention back into the space. New capital starts looking at the market. Old capital that left starts coming back in. And suddenly, assets that looked completely dormant start waking up. But capital doesn't stay in Bitcoin forever. It looks for higher upside. It looks for assets that haven't moved yet. It looks for inefficiencies, places where price hasn't caught up to narrative, where positioning is light, where there's still room to run. And that's where XRP enters the conversation. Because XRP tends to lag slightly before it moves. And when it does move, it doesn't usually move slowly. It moves fast, sometimes uncomfortably fast for people who were waiting on the sidelines. Now here's something that almost no one is talking about. And I think it's actually the most important part of this. This current environment is not the same as previous cycles. We're not just dealing with retail hype anymore. We're dealing with increasing institutional presence. We're dealing with regulatory developments that are actually moving in a constructive direction. We're dealing with a much more structured market than we've ever had before. And that changes how capital flows. It doesn't eliminate volatility. Crypto is still crypto. But it adds a layer of intention that wasn't there in previous cycles, which means when rotation happens, it can be more targeted, more deliberate, less random. And XRP sits in a very specific category inside that environment. Not just as another altcoin competing for attention, but as an asset tied to a larger narrative around payments, cross-border liquidity, and financial infrastructure that institutions actually care about. Now, whether that narrative fully plays out at the scale people are hoping for, that's still something the market will decide over time. But what matters right now is that the narrative exists. It's credible. And it's getting more credible as regulatory clarity improves and real-world adoption expands. Because narratives drive attention, attention drives capital, and capital drives price. It really is that sequential. So when Bitcoin moves, it's not just about Bitcoin. It's about what that movement unlocks across the rest of the market. Think of it like a domino effect. Bitcoin tips first, confidence spreads, capital rotates, and assets with strong narratives and institutional relevance tend to be early beneficiaries of that rotation. Now let's talk about timing, because this is where most people struggle the most. No one can predict the exact moment when rotation will hit XRP. Anyone who tells you they can is either guessing or lying, but what you can identify is the setup leading into it. the conditions that have historically preceded those moves. And right now, we are seeing multiple pieces of that setup come together simultaneously. Bitcoin showing strength, market confidence returning, capital beginning to re-enter the space, and XRP still sitting in a position where it hasn't fully reacted yet. That gap between Bitcoin's movement and XRP's reaction is where opportunity usually lives. It's the window, and windows have a tendency to close faster than people expect. Here's the psychological trap that catches most people, though. Most people feel more comfortable buying after something has already moved because it feels safer. It feels confirmed. You have evidence. You have validation from the market. But in reality, that's often exactly where risk increases the most. Because by the time something feels safe to buy, everyone else has already reached the same conclusion. It's crowded. The easy money is already off the table. The early phase, the quiet phase, is where real positioning happens. And by the time it's obvious to everyone, the best entries are long gone. This is not a new concept. It's how markets have always worked. And it's a pattern that repeats in crypto with remarkable consistency. So the real question isn't what is Bitcoin doing? The real question is what does Bitcoin's move set up next? And if history is even partially consistent here, it sets up a rotation. And if that rotation happens, XRP is one of the assets people start watching very closely. Not because it's guaranteed, nothing in crypto is guaranteed, but because it fits the pattern, because it has the narrative, because it has the institutional relevance, because it has the infrastructure behind it. And markets are built on patterns and narratives and capital flows. That's the entire game. So while everyone is focused on Bitcoin's move right now, the smarter question is, where does the attention go next? Because attention moves markets. And if attention shifts toward XRP, even slightly, that's when things start to change fast. That's when the quiet phase ends. That's when the people who were patient get rewarded and the people who were waiting for confirmation start chasing. So don't just watch Bitcoin. Watch what it triggers. Watch where the capital flows after Bitcoin's move gets priced in. Watch which assets are lagging with strong fundamentals and compelling narratives. Because if this plays out the way it has before, the move in XRP won't start when everyone is ready. It'll start when most people are still watching something else. And that's exactly how these things always begin.